And that's one of the Park Air Champs. That's number 2609E, I believe, yeah. And this is the one, yeah, had the ground adjustable Friedman Burnham prop on it.
And you had, over the years, you had 7, but not all at the same time.
That's right. I think
now tell me about how you think a Champ flies as far as a trainer and versus the alternatives. I think you're, like me, you're somewhat of a Champ bigot.
What did you say last, I think?
I said you're somewhat like me, you're kind of a Champ bigot.
Yeah, I love Cubs too, but I love, for training purposes, I love a Champ a lot more. Champ has much better visibility because it's soloed from the front seat. By intention, you could solo the front seat, but Cubs you can solo the front seat, but you're not supposed to. It's not legal.
You told me once about the airfoil difference and the effects of that too.
There's a difference in the airfoils. 2 airplanes. The Champ was faster and more stable in every way than a Cub. Cub was always, like I said about the Bonanza and that Cessna 310 we're talking about.
Yeah.
Cub always wanders a little bit in roll and pitch and yaw. It always wanders. It never, even in the smoothest area, it's not real steady. If you look for it, it's always moving a little bit in the air. It doesn't have a grasp on the air is the way I think of it. But Champ doesn't do that at all. It's real steady. And the Champ would cruise faster and land at just about the same speed as a Cub, not quite as slow, but almost. And the best thing about the Champ was that the stall speed range, not stall speed range, that's wrong, 3-point range, the angle at which the fuselage sits on the ground is reachable. That angle is reachable in the Champ with a speed range anywhere in a range of 8 miles an hour. On this end or this end, it always is the same angle for good 3-point landings. So a 3-point landing was much easier to obtain because on a Cub, that same range of speed is only 2 miles an hour. You have to be on a Cub. You have to be within that too to get just the right angle to get a 3-point touchdown. Of course, you can land on the wheels of the tail. Doesn't hurt anything much and bounce a little. But it's just the feeling that the Champ was always like a Cadillac. He just came down and landed, and it was perfect every time. Yeah. Of course, it had the oleo hydraulic struts in the gear,
right?
And the Cub didn't. It had the bungees. That made the gear a little steady, harder, so to speak, make the Cub bounce a little bit more on rough ground. Didn't hurt anything, but just one of the things the Champs was better. The structure in the Champ had not as good a visibility as the front seat, but very good. Big windows in the back. You could see around a lot better. And the access in and out with the door, full door open, was much easier on a Champ than a Cub. So it was just a much better training airplane all the way around.
To be fair, though, these are kind of a comparison of apples and oranges in that the Cub came out in the 30s and the Champ came out 10 years later. So there was some improvement just to technology changes.
Be sure they had seen the way to go.
Yeah.
Some things were better. The solo on the front seat, for instance, is a very obvious thing. Everybody was stir crazy, like Alaskans in the wintertime,
yeah, confined
to a cabin. Back seat in the Cub has always been relatively blind and can't see out good. And every student that had to get in there, all these thousands of people learned to fly, and they had to get in that back seat and look out around the instructor the best they could,
yeah,
which was not near as good as a Champ.
Yeah.
So it made a lot of difference, but not insurmountable, just better.
Now, the ground adjustable prop, would you change that very much, or did you find the perfect tuning and just leave it there?
I wouldn't say perfect. Perfect depends on what kind of condition you want.
Exactly.
Basically, the difference is cruise or climb.
Yep.
Climb and takeoff. If you put low pitch, you get good takeoff, good climb characteristics. Increase the pitch, you get good cruise characteristics, but take a longer takeoff run. Mm-hmm. So you just conditions decide. There was no good or bad about it, just what you wanted.
Uh-huh.
So no, we didn't change it. We found a place that worked for us in training. And training, you just, as long as it flies, they're fine.
Yeah.
You don't worry about little things like that.
Right. Was that a non-metal?
Yeah.
Prop?
It was did I say on here, laminated phenolic. Yeah, phenolic was the word. There were layers of phenolic, which is wood and plastic pressed together.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't metal. It had a metal hub where you clamp the blades in it, but the individual blades could be put loose in that hub and turn them any way you want them.
Yeah. Kind of the precursor to carbon fiber props.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we got next, sir?
That's that J5 I owned first in New Jersey and flew home. And that's the airplane that I told you the story about, flying along on the way in smooth air and really smoking condition in the Great Smoky Mountains. And I was above all the haze and smoke, just cruising along, and went to sleep and woke up after a while and couldn't find anything wrong. I knew something had awakened me, but I didn't know what it was, and finally checking around, looking, checking everything, and finally waited till I got right over an airport, which I could see down through just a hole in the haze. Couldn't see around at all, just straight down, sun right behind me. And I got over an airport and I checked the mags, and one of the mags was dead. The other one was okay, it was running all right, but what had happened to wake me up was when that mag spring broke, it dropped that mag and dropped 50 RPM. That 50 RPM drop had waked me up, which is an interesting story because everybody's been tempted to doze a little as you fly along, you know.
Yeah.
You're always a little bit awake. But it was a mighty good old J5.
Now those were side-by-side seating, weren't they?
No.
Were they
J5
still
was
tandem?
a three-place airplane.
Oh,
with
three-place.
one seat in the front, just like a champ, and two wide, they called it, seat in the back. It was wide enough for two really reasonable people, but two big people couldn't get in there.
Mm-hmm. What kind of engine did that have?
And various Continental. It was originally built with a 65 Continental, just like the Cubs, but then it graduated to 75, and most J5s today have an 85.
Uh-huh.
It kept going up. The engines are just about the same, didn't weigh much more, just got a little more power. So everybody's improved the airplane by putting them on there. And I flew passengers all one summer back in Marietta with that airplane. And the one I flew there wasn't mine, wasn't this one, but was a J5 with the original 75 horsepower, which was okay, but when you got three people in the pilot and two passengers, it used all of the airport to get off.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't climb very fast, it just barely fly. So power in those days was a iffy thing. You had to know what you had, know what you could do with it. But I enjoyed the old J5 very much. It's the forerunner of the Piper Super Cruiser after the war. Of course, the J5 was before the war.
Well, the Super Cruiser, you can get two people in the back too, can't you?
Same configuration exactly, but it's also the same size. It's crowded for two people.
But I didn't mean Super Cruiser, I meant Super Cub.
Super Cub, you get two really small people in the back. By weight you can, but there's not room for them. The only people that fly two in the back in Super Cubs usually sit in each other's lap.
I see.
But it's been done a lot.
Yeah.
And in fact, Super Cubs are known to fly with anything you can get in the cabin, no matter how many people it is or what weight it is. 2 or 3 caribou or an old bear or whatever, they load them in there. And it always goes. So you don't hear any stories about Super Cubs that didn't fly with any weight you put on them.
Huh.
Of course, they had more horsepower. That was the secret of that.
Next.
Well, that's an Ercoupe, which we used for a very short time. I can't remember the circumstances of coming and going at Park Air, but I bought it and used it for training there. And my thought was just like the Tri-Gear Cub, we'll see it a little bit, was that 3 wheels Tri-Gear would be a safer, easier training situation. People would not require as much training to solo and therefore be cheaper. And so I was just trying to enhance the training situation all the time.
One time you gave me quite a long lecture, I guess is what I term, about how you thought the Ercoupe was a very maligned plane because it had actually was quite a safe plane, but people abused it. And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the Ercoupe was initials for Ercoupe Engineering Manufacturing Company, Ercoupe, and it was built in 1937, first designed by Fred Weike, W-E-I-K-E, who later became prominent with Piper by designing all the Cherokee airplanes. So he was a very thoughtful designer, and the FAA at that time were having safety plane competitions every year, and the Ercoupe won that the year that it came out as being a safer airplane design. The FAA was of the opinion that the safer the airplane was, the safer the pilots would be. That hasn't proven out over the years. The Ercoupe itself has one of the worst safety records today of any of the light planes, but the reason is clearly not the airplane's fault. It's the theory was, the FAA's theory and mine too, I believed at the time, to make an airplane safer, pilot be safer, but what has resulted is you get less training in a safe airplane because it's so easy to fly, so you get very little training, and you don't learn anything. The pilot didn't learn anything. So Ercoupe accidents are typically landed in pasture, ran in a ditch, and turned over. That's not the airplane's fault. You don't find those in Cubs. You find in Ercoupes.
And the other thing you said was people would abuse the spare fuel. It had an extra, like a spare tank, not a spare tank, but you could switch over to get extra fuel after it got near empty. And people would abuse that by flying, knowing that they had an extra 45 minutes or something.
Cause for accidents.
And they would try to push the plane farther than it should go.
Yeah.
But
it's a real fine airplane, no doubt about it. It's just the concept of a safety airplane has never proven to make safer pilots and safer flying. It's an interesting psychological situation, but it's the pilot's problem versus the airplane problem. The Ercoupe was just the first example of that. They're fine little airplanes. They were all metal. The original ones were fabric-covered wings, but nearly everybody immediately, when they needed fabric, they didn't put the fabric back. They put sheet metal on it. It got about 20 pounds heavier, but it didn't make any difference. It wasn't enough to bother. It flies good, and therefore it's weatherproof.
How about those castering landing gear, the main gear? Did that ever?
I'm sorry.
The main gear had castering wheels, so that you could actually do a crosswind landing.
Yeah, the little booklet came with the Ercoupe, said how to fly, and then it was one section how to do crosswind landings, and it said just line up with the runway and maintain the direction of travel down the center of the runway and let the airplane weather vane into the wind, whatever it was. Didn't worry, just go ahead and land with the wheels turned sideways, which in a regular airplane would just turn you over immediately. But that castering gear aligned itself, and the Ercoupe actually would just land that way and immediately straighten itself out and roll straight down the runway. They worked really well. That was an excellent design.
Yeah, there was a lot of very unique things in it. Could you actually stall an Ercoupe, or was it kept?
Well, it's just a matter of words and definitions of stall. Mm-hmm. You could run out of elevator.
Yeah, right. But it really was right on the edge.
Those would go down, but it didn't actually ever stall the wing or the tail. It would have, if you slowed it down as slow as it go till the wheel hit the stop, then it would buff it a little bit. The nose would drop, and it would drop a little bit. And you just sit there with the wheel full back, and it would round out and fly away again. Do it again if you held the wheel there. You get in big trouble with it though. With anything like that, you could get a high speed and pull up with what elevator you had. It'd pitch up a lot more with higher speed, and you could fall off and go into a spin. They would spin, in spite of saying they wouldn't, but they would. If you aggravated it enough, it would try to spin. Maybe a turn or two, but it'd come out by itself. But any of those kind of things, even that soft stall, you might say, if that happened at 100 feet on final, you were going to hit the ground. Mm-hmm. So it really didn't prevent those things, they just softened them in every way.
One time when I was up at the air show in Abbotsford, Canada, there was a guy, a paraplegic, he did aerobatic routine in an Ercoupe. No legs, just all from the hand. Is that an F6 in the back there?
No, that's a Martin Mauler.
Oh.
They had those at Navy Atlanta at that time. They were not a good airplane, but the Navy bought a few of them and they had them in the reserve.
Okay, what's next?
That's Old Blue, as we called it. That's a significant thing. It's just a Cub, but it's a very early Cub. Didn't have any brakes at all. But we used it off, flew it off and rented it. It was one of the rental airplanes when they opened. Right after World War II, 3 guys in the Merritt area made an airport out on the west side of town. We called it Cobb Air Park, Cobb International, because it had 3 runways. It had one long runway. It was 1,100 feet long, but it was up and downhill a little bit. And then it had another one this way, another one this way, and this one was only 400 feet. But the 1,100 one was one they normally used. And Old Blue was a little, if you landed just right going downhill with Old Blue, you'd be lucky to stop on the runway. You'd probably run off in just a little bit, and they had a bunch of fields of stumps around there. You'd run off into that, and people did that all the time with it. But the trick in it, without the brakes, was to land it wherever and jump out as soon as it slowed down and grab the strut and slide your feet and hold it, slow it down.
Human brakes, huh?
Human brakes, that's right. So you had to get good at that if you're going to fly Old Blue. They had Old Blue and they had 2 or 3 other Cubs, don't remember. They bought new, but it was a real old one. I don't know, early 30s when it didn't have brakes. And
I can't see from here. Is Jean one of those ladies?
No, she wouldn't be.
Okay.
The 2 ladies, that's me, and that's Frank Dawson, my good friend who flew with me out there a lot. We both came home after World War II and we were flying out there. And this one in the back is Bill Cannon's wife.
Oh.
Who was from Ackworth, Georgia, nearby, about 210 miles away, and that's her younger sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, they were riding around with Frank and I guess, that time. I don't know if Bill was married to her or not then. I don't think so. Yeah, he would have been too. They were married. That's right. That's why I knew him. I didn't know him until Bill had gotten married to Audrey. When Bill Cannon married Audrey was early, maybe 41. That's it, before I went into the Navy, so it had been during the year of 41, because I went in late 41 went in the Navy. And now, before that, Bill got married, and he went in the Navy and was gone overseas, and he got back in touch with me. He was based, I believe he was based at Corpus Christi, and he got in touch with me and wanted me to drive with Audrey. He had left his car with her, and he wanted me to drive with her down to Corpus Christi, which I did. We had a most eventful, strange trip, but we made it safely. And so I delivered the car and Audrey to Bill, and that's the last time I saw Bill till after the war.